In the last 2 years, 13th Colony, a little craft distillery down in Georgia, went from being this unknown hole in the wall to being this national phenomenon in the bourbon world. And, their rise to fame was not spotless. I mean, they had that whole fiasco last year with the whole, transparency with the labeling issues going around. But all in all, they are pretty well respected as being a great distillery that makes a great product. Specifically, their double oaked Georgia bourbon has been, it's highly acclaimed, won awards, and is highly sought after. Very hard to even get your hands on a bottle of it. And their product line has continued to evolve and grow and adapt. So today, we're going to be exploring a few things I've not covered yet on the channel. First and foremost, this is the Georgia small batch bourbon, right? So this is the 95 proof as opposed to the 80-90 standard offerings. So 95 proof small batch from 13th Colony. Next to that, we have the brand new, this is the small batch barrel proof bottle. So this comes in at 120.64 proof. And this went up. Some retailers who had bottles of this were selling them, listing them for $300 a pop. But most were listing it at around $200, but the actual MSRP was just $100 flat. But people know they can make money off these bottles, so usually they're marked up a little bit. But this is $100 MSRP, and that's new because that is going to be the small batch at barrel proof. And then the last thing we have here, so we're going to go up a tier in proof each time. And the last thing here is the 13th Colony. This is going to be the single barrel proof. This was a pick that was done in Georgia by a store in Atlanta, Ansley Wines. And they did this pick specifically. So this is a 4.5-year-old barrel at 129.4 proof. Sound good? So ultimately, the goal here is to decide, is the small batch, this is a $40 bottle, is this going to be worth your time, your money, to hunt down and get a bottle of it on your shelf? And then specifically, the one in the middle, I think, is the one that's really going to be the one we focus on the most, because this is going to be the new exclusive bottle to hunt down is the batch strength, right? The barrel strength small batch. And then the store pick is basically taking one barrel out of the small batch and selecting that individually. So can you roll the dice on a barrel pick somewhere? Maybe. So let's dive into these. We'll get them poured, let them open up a bit, and we'll go down the line and share some notes on them. Sound good? So big shout out to Matt who sent in the samples today of these 3 bottles. I think his friend got a hold of one of these. The other 2 are his own that he hunted down through connections and sent me a sample from each of them. So I really appreciate that. So starting right here with the small batch, this is not a new product. This is 95 proof. It is at least 4 years old. I want to say it's a high corn mash, but I want to say somewhere around 21% rye in the mash. So high corn, about 21% rye, and then the rest is barley. Nose is a lot of peppery oak. Some subtle tobacco notes in here as well. And I know this is going to sound weird. I almost get a brown grocery bag. But I don't say that as a bad thing. I'm not using that as a bad taste. It's not unpleasant at all. Yeah, peppery oak, tobacco leaf, that brown paper, a little bit of cinnamon on the nose as well. Again, this comes in at $40. Let's see if it's any good. Cheers. A little bit of butterscotch sweetness, but there's a lot of that peppery oak is really forward on this. More so than I expected from a 95 proof. Not that that's super low or anything, but I am getting a lot of that peppery oak. And that tobacco leaf note that was so prominent on the nose, it's there a little bit on the tail end of the palate, but it disappears pretty quickly. I kind of wish it was a little bit more pronounced. The finish is a lot of butterscotch and oak. But for $40, isn't bad at all. Not bad at all. I will say another thing I like about this though is the mouth feels pretty oily, which is surprising for something that's only 95 proof. But it really clings to the inside of your mouth quite well. Yeah, not a bad little bourbon right there. You see that for $40? Yeah, you may as well. If you don't have a bottle of it, you may as well put it on your shelf. Cool, let's move on. Now this is the one I'm most interested in, because this is the one that's going to be the new hunt, right? So this is the small batch barrel proof. So it has not been cut with water. So this comes in at 120.64 proof for this batch. I kind of expected a little bit more viscosity out of it, but visually speaking, it's leaving a thin coating around the glass. But I almost expected it to look thicker than it does. Beautiful color to it though. Let's get in here on the nose. Ooh, that gives me a lot more of that tobacco and brown sugar. Yeah, tobacco leaf and brown sugar for sure. Front and center. That peppery oak hasn't gone away either. It's there. And I do want to note that some people may be put off by it being $100 and only being a 4-year minimum. in the batch. But one thing you do have to remember is that this is Georgia. These are aged in Georgia heat. So they can't really go quite as long. They tend to reach that maturity a little bit faster. You don't want them to turn astringent and syrupy, which will happen if you let them spend too much time in that kind of heat. So because of the heat, you're getting that rapid movement into the barrel and grabbing those flavors from the red layer and then jumping back out into the barrel itself. But the rye spice is really shining through on the nose of this in the way that the standard small batch offering didn't have. All right, let's try it. Cheers. Yeah, up front I'm getting a lot of that tobacco note for sure. And also sort of this like a wintergreen kind of a mintiness to it, which might be the rye and the mash getting a chance to shine through a little bit more. And then as the sip progresses, then I'm getting more of the brown sugar and the oak as well. This has a little bit more of that funk note that I love to get on a good, well-aged, high-proof bourbon. Going in for a second sip, as I get more acclimated to the proof, a little bit more bright vanilla on the front end of the palate as well. But the finish is where that pepper comes back around. Some white peppercorns. That's pretty stinking good. Is it $100 good? I think $100 is a pretty fair price for this. But the secondary prices that you're seeing, like $200, I don't think so. I don't think so personally. But if you could get this at MSRP, I think you'd need to pick it up. At the very least, you would probably get your money back out of this bottle if you were offering it within a club or something like that as a bottle swap. Like if you were like, hey, I saw this, I picked it up because I knew someone in my club would definitely want to have their hands on this bottle. If anybody's looking to do a bottle trade for something else that's unopened that you might be interested in, then there you go. You can always do stuff like that. Either way, I think that's pretty good. Let's move on. So we've done the small batch. We've done the small batch undiluted at, barrel strength. And then now we're moving on to just an individual specific barrel from the batch that was selected by a group and uncut. So this one is higher proof. This one's going to come in at 129.4 proof. It's 4.5-year-old barrel from Georgia. And the price for this is also $100, same as the small batch barrel proof. The nose, this one's giving me a lot more of the brown sugar alongside the tobacco. It's a lot sweeter on the nose, but also getting like a mapley note as well. Like maple syrup fresh from the Sugar Shack, which I didn't get on just the standard small batch barrel proof. But I think that tobacco note is just pretty typical of 13th Colony because I've gotten it on everything so far. But yeah, this almost on the nose reminds me in a lot of ways of like a double oaked rye, which I love a good double oaked rye. Speaking of which, I think next week we should be having a finished rye blind going up on the channel. So that should be a lot of fun too. I'm looking forward to doing the blind. All right, let's try this one. Cheers. It does smell a lot hotter, by the way, on the nose. I will say that real quick before we move on. Here we go. Man, that's like a cinnamon pepper, leather, tobacco bomb. A lot of dark, rich flavors coming out of this. The sweetness comes around late in the finish and extends that brown sugar out into the finish with the oak. But up front, it's all those dark, rich flavors. It's like if cigar was a drink. That's what this is like. It's like if a cigar was a drink, this is what it would be like. It's also a little bit oilier, a little more thick and viscous in terms of mouthfeel than the previous sip. Yeah, oak, tobacco, and leather are the stars of this show. And the sweetness comes around late into the palate and on into the finish to sort of soften it up a little bit. But up front, you're getting a lot of those darker, richer flavors that I really love. I will say this, I don't think any of these tonight have been better than the double oaked. But I do really like this, the single barrel here especially. And the small batch barrel strength I think is really good. If I ever see that at SRP, I'll probably pick it up. But chances are pretty slim I will here in Michigan. So for me, that double oaked remains the best offering they've got. But let me go ahead and hand out some scores to these sips tonight, okay? The standard small batch, 95 proof. I'm probably going to give that one a solid 6.9 because that puts it right on the cusp of being called really good. You should buy it. I think this is more like this is really good, maybe buy it. It's pretty good. Maybe buy it. $40. Give it a shot. Introduce you to their profile. I think it depends on what you like. It depends on if you've had anything from them before, but I think it's a great introduction to their profile. I don't think it's the kind of thing that I'm like, yeah, I want more of that. You know what I mean? To me, the 13th Colony profile itself, those leathers and tobacco notes, go really well with the richness that you get from a higher proof, the sweet brown sugars that come in as well to help supplement it. And so because of that, I want more of those things. That's why I would say that the small batch barrel proof, I would probably have to say I'm going to give that a score of 7.3. because that is really good, and I think you should buy it. I would recommend that you buy it if you see it. Still only a 4-year product minimum, so it is pretty expensive for a 4-year product, but at the same time, you are getting high proof, you are getting that Georgia oak interaction, and so that's leading to a lot more of those darker, richer flavors like the leathers and tobaccos, which are great. But then moving on to the single barrel pick, coming out of Atlanta, I think this one I would probably give a 7.5 to. I think if you ever see a single barrel offering from 13th Colony, you got to pick it up. I mean, you just got to pick it up. That's something that's going to be rare. It's going to look great on your shelf. It's going to be a bit of a flex, but it's also going to be really enjoyable to drink too. So there you go. That's 13th Colony, the new small batch barrel proof, and then the other variants of it as well, and what I thought about them. What do you think of 13th Colony? Have you had anything from them yet? If you have, what's been your favorite product that you've had from them? For me, I still think the double oaked is the best thing I've ever had from this distiller. Thanks again, Matt, for sending in the samples. Really appreciate you, brother. Big shout out to my Patreon supporters for funding the bottles that we get to pick up and review here on the channel. We're brainstorming some more events that we're going to be doing together, so make sure you're checking those. If you are a premium or Grandmaster supporter, make sure you're tuning into the specific Discord for you guys and the chat room and the Patreon as well, because we're brainstorming up some stuff. We'd love your input as well. So may you live richly and get better with age, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.